The biggest power shift in modern sports is unfolding right before our eyes. For 2 straight seasons, WNBA veterans tried to sideline Caitlyn Clark with hard fouls, dismissive interviews, and quiet exclusion from major stages. They believed they could control the spotlight. Today, the spotlight chose her. NBC, Peacock, and league power brokers just made their decision clear. They're building around Caitlyn. While others argue contracts and threaten walkouts, she's signing deals and expanding the game. They tried to box her out. Instead, they boxed themselves in. Welcome to the new era of basketball power. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are witnessing right now is not just a media deal. It is not just a television appearance. It is not just another endorsement announcement scrolling across the bottom of your screen. This is a full-scale power transfer. And it is unfolding in broad daylight. For 2 straight years, a certain faction within the WNBA convinced themselves that they controlled the narrative, that they controlled the culture, that they controlled who gets elevated and who gets ignored. They believed seniority meant supremacy. They believed tenure meant ownership. They believed that if they closed ranks tightly enough, no outsider, no rookie, could ever disrupt their hierarchy. But disruption does not ask for permission. Disruption arrives, produces results, and forces adaptation. And Caitlyn Clark did not walk into the league quietly. She arrived with record-breaking viewership numbers trailing behind her like a comet tail. She arrived with arenas selling out before she even laced up her sneakers. She arrived with television executives recalculating projections in real time. And instead of recognizing opportunity, the old guard chose resistance. Instead of recognizing growth, they chose gatekeeping. Instead of recognizing leverage, they chose ego. The physical play? The hard fouls? The welcome to the league moments that seem to happen on a weekly basis? Those were not just competitive plays. They were symbolic gestures. They were statements that said, "This is our house." But the irony is brutal. Because while those gestures played out on hardwood floors, a completely different game was being played in boardrooms. And in those boardrooms, executives were not asking who has the most all-star appearances. They were not asking who has the longest tenure. They were asking one question and one question only: who moves the needle? And the data answered loudly. Television ratings spiked when Clark played. Social media engagement exploded when Clark posted. Jersey sales surged when Clark stepped onto the court. The numbers were not subtle. They were overwhelming. Corporate sponsors do not invest based on sentiment. They invest based on scale. And scale is exactly what Caitlyn Clark delivered. Now look at the contrast. While some veterans were appearing on podcasts delivering thinly veiled critiques, Clark was appearing in nationally televised interviews delivering humility. While some players were debating whether the spotlight was deserved, Clark was quietly expanding the spotlight for everyone. But here is the twist that changes everything. When the opportunity came for a major network to anchor its promotional strategy, they did not build it around nostalgia. They built it around momentum. NBC and Peacock did not accidentally feature Caitlyn Clark front and center. That was not coincidence. That was strategy. When a network commits billions to media rights, it does not gamble blindly. It studies metrics. It studies behavior. It studies growth curves. And the growth curve with the steepest incline had one name attached to it. This was not about disrespecting history. It was about investing in trajectory. The veterans believed that control of the locker room equaled control of the future. But the future is controlled by attention. And attention is controlled by audience demand. Fans vote with remotes. Fans vote with subscriptions. Fans vote with ticket purchases. And the vote was decisive. The audience did not tune in for internal politics. They tuned in for logo threes. They tuned in for fearless range. They tuned in for the kind of confidence that stretches beyond the arc and beyond expectation. This is where the shift becomes undeniable. Because once the networks aligned their promotional machine behind Clark, the balance of leverage changed overnight. The conversation stopped being, how do we preserve the old system, and started being, how do we maximize the new one? That is a seismic pivot. And seismic pivots do not leave everything standing. At the same time, labor tensions simmered in the background. Revenue shares were debated. Salary structures were contested. Demands were amplified. But here is the uncomfortable truth: leverage in negotiations depends on irreplaceability. And the emergence of a singular star complicates collective leverage. When a network can promote a transcendent personality independently of league-wide disputes, the calculus shifts. The bargaining table loses some of its gravity. This is not about personal animosity. It is about market reality. Streaming platforms survive on acquisition and retention. They prioritize content that drives both. And Clark's presence does exactly that. Every highlight clip becomes marketing. Every nationally televised appearance becomes reinforcement. Every endorsement becomes validation. The ecosystem feeds itself. The old guard assumed that the league's identity was fixed. But identity evolves with audience behavior. And audience behavior has made something crystal clear: the appetite for Clark is insatiable. That appetite cannot be legislated away. It cannot be shamed away. It cannot be fouled away. It can only be embraced, or ignored at great cost. What we are seeing now is the cost of ignoring it. The promotional graphics tell the story. The primetime segments tell the story. The strategic partnerships tell the story. This is not subtle repositioning. It is a headline-level recalibration. The face of the campaign is not a committee. It is a singular figure. And that figure represents a bridge between generations of fans, college viewers, NBA loyalists, casual sports watchers, and new subscribers alike. The belief that pressure would shrink her influence has proven catastrophically wrong. Pressure amplified it. Criticism intensified loyalty. Resistance fueled curiosity. Every attempt to dim the spotlight only widened it. And networks pay for light. They do not pay for shadows. So here we stand. A league at a crossroads. Veterans reassessing their leverage. Executives doubling down on momentum. Fans choosing sides not out of spite, but out of enthusiasm. And at the center of it all is a player who simply kept shooting, kept competing, and kept smiling while the tectonic plates shifted beneath everyone's feet. This is not the end of competition. It is the beginning of recalibration. And recalibration rarely feels comfortable for those who built the previous blueprint. But the blueprint has changed. The ratings have spoken. The sponsors have spoken. The networks have spoken. And the market rarely whispers. It declares. Now let's go deeper, because surface-level analysis does not capture the magnitude of this transformation. What is unfolding is not merely about one player receiving opportunities. It is about the redistribution of cultural capital within professional basketball. Cultural capital determines visibility. Visibility determines monetization. Monetization determines influence. And influence determines who shapes the narrative moving forward. For years, the internal ecosystem of the WNBA operated on a seniority-based respect model. Championships mattered. Tenure mattered. Historical contributions mattered. And they still do. But the marketplace introduced a new variable: scalability. Scalability measures how far a personality can extend beyond the traditional boundaries of the league. Caitlyn Clark's brand did not stop at team loyalties. It expanded into college rivalries, into NBA discourse, into mainstream sports debate shows, into households that had never previously discussed the WNBA at dinner. That is scalability. When NBC positioned Clark within its broader NBA coverage, it sent a message that transcended a single contract. It signaled integration. It signaled cross-pollination. It signaled that women's basketball was no longer confined to isolated coverage windows but woven into the fabric of primetime basketball culture. And the face of that integration was not selected randomly. It was selected because it resonates across demographics. Consider the optics. Veteran champions watching from home while a rookie occupies high-profile analyst seats alongside NBA legends. That is not accidental symbolism. That is strategic placement. Networks understand association psychology. When viewers see Clark seated beside iconic names, they subconsciously elevate her status. That elevation compounds with every broadcast. It builds familiarity. It builds legitimacy. It builds inevitability. Meanwhile, collective bargaining discussions continue. Revenue percentages are debated passionately. Demands for improved compensation are justified by years of underpayment. But here is the strategic complication: when the most marketable individual asset has diversified exposure beyond league dependency, the negotiation leverage becomes asymmetrical. The union negotiates collectively. The network markets selectively. And selective marketing reshapes power dynamics. The veterans once believed unity would insulate them. But unity without adaptability becomes rigidity. And rigidity fractures under rapid change. Instead of publicly embracing the influx of attention Clark generated, some voices minimized it. Instead of aligning messaging around growth, some amplified grievance. And grievance, while emotionally powerful, does not drive subscription spikes. Performance does. Positivity does. Momentum does. Corporate partners observe tone as carefully as they observe talent. They ask, is this brand safe? Is this personality aspirational? Is this figure aligned with long-term expansion? Clark's consistency, showing up, performing, refraining from escalating controversy, made those answers easy. Predictability in character creates confidence in investment. And confidence unlocks capital. What makes this moment historic is not merely the visibility Clark enjoys. It is the redefinition of gatekeeping. For decades, access to star status required internal validation. Now, validation flows directly from audience engagement metrics. A rookie can command influence if the audience crowns her. And the audience crowned Clark before she ever signed her professional contract. That pre-existing momentum created insulation. The attempts to challenge her legitimacy only strengthened her base. Every critique generated counter-support. Every debate trended. Every viral clip expanded reach. Controversy, instead of constraining growth, accelerated it. Networks thrive on acceleration. They measure velocity of conversation. And Clark's conversational velocity outpaced the field. This is why the promotional campaigns feel singular. It is why the spotlight appears concentrated. It is why cross-platform appearances multiply. It is why endorsement portfolios expand. Because in modern sports economics, concentrated star power can sometimes outperform distributed recognition. A singular figurehead simplifies messaging. It clarifies branding. It amplifies memorability. For the veterans, this recalibration is jarring. They invested years into building credibility, into securing championships, into establishing standards. And suddenly, the axis of attention tilts. But attention is not allocated by resume alone. It is allocated by resonance. And resonance cannot be mandated. It emerges organically from audience connection. What lies ahead will test adaptability. Will the established stars integrate into this new promotional ecosystem? Will they reposition themselves as mentors, collaborators, co-beneficiaries of expanded visibility? Or will resistance persist, deepening divides? Because make no mistake, the expansion of interest benefits everyone willing to align with it. Rising tides, when embraced, lift entire leagues. The corporate calculus is clear. Networks align with growth vectors. Sponsors attach to upward trends. Streaming platforms prioritize faces that convert casual curiosity into recurring engagement. Clark's presence checks each box. She bridges generational fandom. She appeals to traditionalists and newcomers alike. She embodies highlight culture in a digital-first era, and so the message reverberates beyond one season. The pathway to prominence has shifted. It now runs through audience magnetism as much as through locker room hierarchy. It rewards market awareness alongside skill execution. It values cross-platform fluency as much as on-court dominance. That is the new blueprint. This is not about erasing history. It is about accelerating the future. It is about recognizing that a league can honor pioneers while empowering new pioneers simultaneously. But empowerment requires acceptance of change. And change has already arrived. The networks have made their alignment visible. The sponsors have positioned their bets. The audience has demonstrated its appetite. The conversation has expanded beyond niche circles into mainstream sports dialogue. And at the center stands a player whose influence now stretches from hardwood to studio desk to streaming interface. The transformation is structural. It is psychological. It is financial. And it is cultural. The era of controlled elevation has given way to the era of data-driven coronation. And in that coronation, the crown was not assigned by seniority. It was awarded by scale, and for those who thought pressure, politics, and petty resistance could slow this momentum, the only chapter left is irrelevance. They aimed to sideline Caitlyn Clark, but in the end, they sidelined themselves. The new era will air in prime time on NBC and Peacock, and the old gatekeepers won't have front row seats to the future they tried to block.